He vanished in the middle of a crowd. At 4:41 p.m. on a humid Friday in June, Daniel Whitaker, 23 years old, software intern, quiet kid with second-hand sneakers, stepped out of a Loop office tower in downtown Chicago, waved to a coworker, and walked straight into the noise of traffic and voices. He was supposed to catch the Green Line home. He never arrived. By 6:15 p.m., his phone went dark. By 9 o'clock, his roommate reported him missing. And by sunrise, a city that didn't slow for anyone was already whispering about the boy who melted into rush hour and left nothing behind but a flicker of his face on a camera. If you look at him on the security footage from the lobby, timestamp 16 hours 41 minutes and 12 seconds, he's ordinary. Pale, brown hair flopping over his forehead, messenger bag tugging at one shoulder. He pauses at the revolving door as if he's forgotten something, pats his pockets, then steps into the street. Outside, another camera on a deli awning catches him turning east, weaving between a woman with a stroller and a bike messenger who shouts without looking back. The frame blurs with headlights. A bus pulls up and erases Daniel from the shot. When the bus lurches away, he's gone. That's the moment people obsess over. The vanishing cut. Did he duck into a cab? Slip into the alley? Was someone waiting just beyond the bus's rear door? Investigators would replay those 22 seconds until the pixels emptied of meaning. But first, there was the part that made no sense even before he disappeared, the part that began at 3:08 p.m., with a call Daniel received from an unlisted number that lasted 37 seconds. He left his desk immediately after. No one knows what was said. His last texts, polite, short, went out to his mother and his sister around 4 o'clock. Running late, be home after 6. To his roommate, pizza? My treat. To his girlfriend, Serena, nothing. They'd argued the night before, she said later, about money and the way he had been elsewhere for weeks. He'd laughed it off, kissed her forehead, and crashed on her sofa. In the morning, he left before she woke up. By the time detectives pulled Daniel's building's access logs, one detail snapped into place: someone had used a visitor badge to ride the elevator to the 12th floor, the floor where Daniel interned, at 3:13 p.m., 5 minutes after that strange call. The badge belonged to no one. It had been signed out under the name D. White. The signature was a tight, slanted scrawl. The guard on duty didn't remember anything unusual, just a man in a baseball cap, head down, saying he left his wallet upstairs. The cameras at the elevator bank? Conveniently offline for maintenance between 3:05 and 3:40. Of course they were. Daniel left his desk at 4:37 p.m., according to his keycard swipe. He told a coworker he needed air. He looked tired. He always looked tired. What people don't tell you about big cities is that they swallow the edges of stories. Everything frays at the margins. Daniel's life had plenty of loose threads, none of them dramatic. His dad left when he was 8. He ran track in high school, bad knee by junior year. He taught himself to code. He wasn't a risk taker. He was the kid who brought extra chargers to group projects. He didn't drink much. He didn't fight. If he kept secrets, they were small ones: the anxiety meds he didn't want his mom to know about, the overdraft fees he hid from Serena, the job interview he took with a finance startup without telling his current boss, because he was tired of coffee runs and polite thank yous. When the missing poster went up, Daniel's face beside a number, strangers started seeing him everywhere. That's what happens. A train conductor swore he was sleeping in the second car. A barista said he ordered a cold brew at 7:10 and tipped $1 in coins. A woman insisted he bumped her shoulder near State and Lake, said sorry, then vanished into the crosswalk. None of those people were lying, exactly. They were remembering the city to themselves. Detectives did what they could. They pulled clips from traffic cams and storefronts along the corridor where Daniel might have walked. They traced his debit card, last use at 12:26 p.m., a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water. They subpoenaed his phone records. The ping at 4:59 p.m. hit a tower near Wabash. At 5:12, another ping, southwest, weaker. Then silence, like the device slipped under a blanket of concrete or into deep water. The roommate, Luis, was cooperative and terrified in equal measure. He showed them Daniel's closet, button-downs, one suit bag hanging empty. He opened Daniel's desk, a stack of resumes, a postcard from his sister, a receipt for 2 Amtrak tickets dated the following weekend. "We were gonna visit our mom," Luis said. "He wouldn't run. He's not that guy." Serena sat on the edge of her bed and tried not to cry. She told them about the argument. She admitted she'd checked his location on Find My iPhone at 4:20 out of habit. He was at work. She scrolled through weeks of messages that looked like a couple trying to keep it together in a city that didn't care if they failed. The last voicemail she saved forever, the one he left 3 days earlier, late, half-whispered. "Hey. I know I've been weird. I'm just stressed. Big stuff I can't talk about yet. Don't freak out, okay? I love you. Big stuff." The phrase would haunt her. At 2 a.m., officers walked the alleys off Wabash with flashlights, their boots scuffing glass and gravel, calling a first name into air that didn't answer back. The river ran black under the bridges. A bar back hosed down the sidewalk where somebody had been sick. In a doorway, a young man curled inside a jacket that wasn't his, headphones on. City night noises, sirens, laughter, a truck's brakes, braided and broke apart. If Daniel was in any of it, he didn't speak. At 8:40 the next morning, a dry cleaner 2 blocks from the deli pulled footage the detectives had missed. At 4:44 p.m., as the bus masked the deli camera's view, Daniel's reflection flitted across the dry cleaner's glass, then another figure stepped into frame behind him. A man in a navy hoodie and ball cap, face half hidden, following at a casual distance. He looked like 100 other men on a Friday afternoon. But when the bus rolled on, and Daniel failed to reappear in the deli cam's angle, the hooded man did. He paused on the corner, glanced over his shoulder toward the street where Daniel had been, then walked west, hands in his pockets. Was he tailing Daniel? Or just another ghost in the crowd? The detectives froze the frame anyway. They printed the face. They circled the cap. By noon, the internet had a theory. It always does. Some said Daniel staged his disappearance to dodge debt. Others thought he was recruited, honey-trapped into a scam that started with a job interview and ended with a van. Someone found his Reddit handle and convinced themselves he'd been posting encrypted messages in a programming forum. A college friend remembered Daniel freaking out about a guy who kept showing up at the coffee shop, on the train platform, by the office elevators. No names. No proof. Just a chill that wouldn't leave. There was one more thing, the detail most people skipped, because it didn't fit the story they wanted. At 4:39 p.m., 2 minutes before he left the building, Daniel sent an email to himself from a burner account. Subject line blank. Body, a single sentence. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix it in time. Fix what? That question would pull open every floorboard of Daniel Whitaker's life. Underneath, there were things no one expected to find: the anonymous GitHub repository with code that didn't look like intern work, the client file he shouldn't have had access to, the meetups he attended under a different name, the little black notebook in his backpack, pages of numbers and names, and a sketch of the Chicago River with a star next to a bridge no tourist would bother with. And even deeper down, beyond passwords and careful lies, the part almost no one guessed, that the first person who set this case on fire wasn't a stranger in a hoodie, or a faceless city, or even Daniel himself. It was someone who loved him. And they were about to become the last person anyone suspected. Detectives didn't sleep that weekend. The case moved fast, not because they had leads, but because something about Daniel's disappearance felt wrong. A clean young man with no criminal record doesn't just evaporate between two security cameras in broad daylight. By Sunday morning, the investigation had two fronts: digital forensics and real-world searches. The Chicago River, dark and slow-moving, became the focus first. Divers swept under the bridges marked in Daniel's notebook. Boats scanned with sonar. Nothing. No clothes, no backpack, no body. Meanwhile, the cyber unit started peeling through Daniel's online presence. What they found didn't match the quiet, anxious intern his friends described. There were encrypted emails sent from anonymous servers. Messages in programming forums under the username RiverGhost89. Meetups logged in calendar apps that didn't sync to his primary account. One of the detectives, a younger guy who knew his way around the internet, called it a digital shadow life. The GitHub repository was the strangest piece. Dozens of files uploaded from Daniel's IP address, all filled with code referencing some sort of financial data scraping system. It wasn't criminal, exactly, but it was powerful. Someone could use it to siphon transactions in real time. Hidden, quiet theft. And then there was one folder that stood out. It was locked behind 3 layers of encryption. When they finally cracked it late Sunday night, inside they found a list of 10 names. 8 were unfamiliar. 2 were very familiar, a senior executive from Daniel's internship company, and Serena Vargas, his girlfriend. The detectives stared at the screen. What the hell was he doing? Monday morning, they brought Serena back in. She looked wrecked, no sleep, hollow eyes, biting her nails. When shown the list, she froze. "I don't know why my name is there," she whispered. But her voice trembled in a way that made the lead detective, Morales, lean forward. "Did Daniel ever talk to you about work? Anything unusual?" She hesitated. "He said he found something. In their servers. Like, files he shouldn't have seen. He got scared. Said he was being watched. I told him he was paranoid." "Oh my God." The detectives exchanged looks. Serena's reaction wasn't rehearsed. It was raw. They shifted focus to Daniel's company. A mid-sized tech firm, outwardly clean. The executive whose name appeared on the list, Robert Kendry, was known for his aggressive business tactics but had no criminal record. When questioned, he seemed surprised, even offended, to be involved. But when the detectives subpoenaed internal company emails, one thread made them stop cold. Subject: Whitaker. From R. Kendry. To redacted. Timestamp: 2 weeks before the disappearance. Body: we need to make sure he keeps quiet until this rolls out. Find a way to handle it. Quietly. The tone wasn't ambiguous. It was cold. Corporate. Dangerous. By Tuesday, whispers began spreading through the department. Maybe Daniel stumbled onto something bigger than himself: corporate fraud, insider trading, maybe worse. The hooded man from the footage became a critical puzzle piece. Detectives enhanced the image and ran it through facial recognition. One partial match popped up: a contractor who'd done occasional work for the tech firm. A man named Victor Hale. Military background. Spotty employment. No fixed address. When they tried to locate him, they hit a wall. He disappeared, too. As pressure mounted, Serena admitted something else. 2 weeks before Daniel vanished, he'd woken her at 3 a.m., terrified. He claimed someone had been inside his apartment. The door was locked, nothing was stolen, but his laptop had been moved. "He told me I didn't understand," she said, hands shaking. "He said if anything happened, to look at the bridge he drew in that notebook. He was serious. I thought he was just spiraling." By midweek, the case had shifted from a missing person to a suspected conspiracy. The FBI was looped in quietly. Reporters caught wind. Headlines flared. Young programmer vanishes, corporate secrets involved? Behind closed doors, Detective Morales drew a timeline on the board. 3:08 p.m., mystery phone call. 3:13 p.m., unidentified visitor enters the building. 4:37 p.m., Daniel leaves desk. 4:41 p.m., vanishes outside. Every step, he said, tapping the board, is planned. But by whom? The digital evidence pointed toward the company. The human evidence, Daniel's fear, the hooded man, Serena's involvement, hinted at something personal. And through it all, Daniel's final email to himself hung like a riddle. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix it in time. Fix what? By Thursday, the case slowed to a crawl. Leads frayed. The hooded man's partial match, Victor Hale, was a ghost on paper. No leases. No current contracts. A P.O. box that hadn't been opened in months. The company lawyer stonewalled with polite emails. Reporters moved on to a warehouse fire on the south side. Even the river seemed to hunker down and keep its answers. Morales hated quiet. He went back to the notebook, the star next to a bridge no tourist would bother with. Not the postcard spans. A workhorse, steel, low to the water, a place where the city forgot to look pretty. He took one officer and a pair of gloves. They found it because they were willing to get dirty. Beneath a crossbeam, inches above the slow brown water, a small magnetic case clung to metal crusted with ice and grit. Inside were two things wrapped in plastic, a cheap flip phone with no SIM and a flat black USB drive. Back at the lab, the phone was useless, no call logs, no SIM, no contacts. But the calendar had one scheduled reminder on the day Daniel vanished, 4:45 p.m., drop. The USB took longer. When it finally opened, the screen filled with spreadsheets and code that looked like a private language. The tech stared, whistled low, and called Morales. The files were meticulous. Transaction ledgers with micro-withdrawals, pennies scraped from thousands of accounts in a way that wouldn't trigger alerts. Shell entities with harmless names. A flowchart that tied them all together like a web, with a box at its center labeled Kestrel. The company where Daniel intern didn't appear on any ledger. But internal email headers, clipped, anonymized, hinted at servers Daniel had no right to access. And then there were the names. Not the list of 10 from his encrypted folder, this was longer, annotated. Dates, amounts, initials. Next to some entries, Daniel had typed a single word in caps, leverage. Blackmail, the tech asked. Morales shook his head. Insurance. If Daniel had stumbled onto quiet theft, he hadn't run. He'd built a record, and hid it where only he knew to look. The reminder at 4:45 p.m. suggested he meant to move or retrieve the package minutes after he left the building. He didn't get the chance. The USB gave them momentum and a problem. The fraud looked real, but it was like fog, you could see it, you couldn't hold it. They needed a person to press. Kendry was the obvious choice. When Morales put the chart on the table, Kendry frowned as if asked to solve a puzzle beneath him. This is nonsense, he said. We're a software company, detective. If your intern took proprietary code, we'll press charges. But this, he tapped Kestrel. It's a code name. For a product prototype. He didn't understand what he was looking at. Then why the email? Morales slid across the printout. We need to make sure he keeps quiet until this rolls out. Find a way to handle it. Quietly. Kendry's jaw tightened for the first time. Internal politics, he said, too fast. We have investors. Leaks can kill a launch. Was Hale one of your contractors? I don't know that name. It wasn't a lie, exactly. It was the kind of truth that hid the part that mattered. That afternoon, a patrol unit found a burned-out sedan off a county road in Indiana, 45 miles from the city. Inside, under ash and warped metal, were the remains of a hoodie and a ball cap. A registration sticker matched a vehicle rented under a prepaid card linked to the same P.O. box as Hale. The coroner took samples. Reporters smelled blood and came back. Before forensics could do much, the lab pinged Morales with something stranger than fire. The magnetic case itself, the little box from under the bridge, had latent prints beneath the grime. 2 partials. One was Daniel. The other hit on their database with a surprising confidence score. Serena Vargas. Morales went very still. They brought her in again, gently. She stared at the photo of the bridge like it was a place she'd never seen. Why are your prints on a case we found under there? Morales asked. Her mouth opened and closed. I don't know what that is. Did Daniel ask you to hold something for him? Did he ask you to go to the bridge? No, the denial came too quick, too clean. Then her eyes flooded, not with the tears of a girlfriend who'd been patient for days, but with the panic of someone watching the walls inch in. Serena, Morales said softly, we found your name in his encrypted folder weeks ago. We thought you were a target. Now we have your prints on his dead drop. If you're trying to protect him, you might be burying him. She folded. Not all the way, not yet. But a seam split. He told me, she whispered. He said if anything happened, there was a thing under the bridge. He made me practice taking it off the beam. He didn't want me to drop it into the water. Why would he make you do that? Because he thought they were watching him. Who's they? She shook her head, a tiny, miserable arc. I don't know. Did you go there after he disappeared? No. Did anyone tell you to? Her hands twisted. No. Morales let the quiet hang. He pictured the drive to the river late at night, the water breathing under iron. A hand reaching into cold space to slide a magnet loose. He pictured a second hand, not Serena's, taking it from her. He went back to the timeline. 3:08 p.m., the call. 3:13, the visitor. 4:41, the bus. 4:45, drop. If Serena had the muscle memory to pull the case, who taught her? Not Daniel alone. Someone had stood with her under that bridge. Someone who knew where to park, where to stand, how not to be seen. When the coroner called, the Indiana car gave them a gift and a riddle. The blood in the burned sedan belonged to two different people, trace amounts only, degraded by heat. Neither matched Daniel. Neither matched Hale. Whoever torched the car wanted them to think a ghost had turned to smoke. But there are better magic tricks. Morales widened the circle. He re-interviewed the guard who signed out the D. White badge. This time, the guard remembered something he hadn't thought mattered. The man in the cap had a small scar along his jaw, the kind you get from a bar fight or a bad fall. Left side, he said, tracing his own face. Here. Luis, the roommate, had a scar there. So did a dozen other men in the file. But the thought lodged like a splinter. That night, Morales drove past Daniel's building and parked where Serena would have parked if she'd gone to the river after midnight. He killed his lights and watched the bridge until the cold ate into his bones. Somewhere between the skyline and the black water, the shape of the puzzle shifted. What if the hooded man wasn't the hunter but the decoy? What if the company wasn't the only secret Daniel was holding? What if the person who loved him most had been inside the plan from the start, and then changed the plan without telling him? The next morning, the lab confirmed something small and devastating. On the USB's hidden partition, beneath the ledgers and code, was a folder named with a date. Inside, a single audio file. A voice memo, recorded 3 days before Daniel vanished. 2 voices. Daniel's, low, tired. And another voice, close enough to his that you could almost mistake it for an echo. Okay, the other voice said. We do it my way. Quiet. No heroes. Morales replayed the last line until the waveform blurred. The file's metadata listed the recorder, a cheap digital mic. The title was a single word. Luis. Luis had been cooperative since the first night. Nervous, helpful, the kind of roommate who left post-it notes about chores and split the bills on time. No record. No red flags. He'd even printed missing flyers and joined a search party. But now there was a voice memo with his name on it. His voice, calm and low, saying, we do it my way. Quiet. No heroes. Morales didn't move fast. He'd learned the hard way that moving too fast made people disappear. Instead, he invited Luis down to the station to clarify some details. Luis came willingly, wearing the same hoodie from 2 interviews earlier, hands shoved in his pockets. They played the audio file. Morales watched his face. A flicker, recognition, then calculation. That's not me, Luis said. Too late. You sure? Morales asked. Because the mic ID says otherwise. I don't know how, maybe Daniel recorded someone else, using my name as a file name or something. You know how paranoid he was getting. It wasn't a bad attempt. But his hands were sweating. His knee bounced. He stared at the table like it might give him an answer. Morales leaned forward. Tell me why your voice is on a file hidden inside a USB drive. Daniel risked his job to hide under a bridge. Luis exhaled through his nose. I don't know. I really don't. Tell me why the guard remembers a guy with a scar on his jaw signing in as D. White. That's not me. I was home that afternoon. Yeah? Morales tilted his head. And if I pull your phone records, that'll check out? Luis hesitated. Just long enough. The silence said more than he realized. By Friday afternoon, they had a warrant for his phone. The GPS history placed him near Daniel's building at 3:11 p.m. and again near the bridge at 11:47 that night. Luis cracked on Saturday morning. It wasn't dramatic. No chase, no yelling. He just sat in the interview room, hands limp, eyes rimmed red, and started talking. I didn't kill him, he said. I swear to God, I didn't kill him. Then start at the beginning, Morales said. Luis told a story no one expected. Daniel, he said, had come to him weeks before with the discovery, a pattern in the company's servers, hidden like a stain beneath layers of code. Money moving, quiet and precise. He'd shown Luis the files, the names, the Kestrel project. He wanted help building a failsafe, a way to expose everything if something happened. Luis was good with security systems. He'd studied computer engineering before switching majors. They'd recorded that audio memo as a pact. Daniel wanted to take everything to the authorities. Luis thought that was suicide. "You don't go up against people with that kind of money," Luis said, voice hoarse. "You don't win." Morales asked why he'd been near the building that afternoon. "Because Daniel called me after that weird phone call," Luis said. "He said it was happening." He sounded different. Panicked. "He told me to meet him outside. Said we'd go to the bridge together, move the drop somewhere safer. I got there late. I never saw him. I swear." "Then why the fake visitor badge?" Luis clenched his jaw. "Because I didn't want to be on camera. I know that looks bad. But I was trying to help him, not hurt him." Morales didn't buy it completely. But Luis's story had enough detail to make it dangerous to dismiss. "What about 11:47 p.m. near the bridge?" Luis swallowed hard. "I went there to see if he'd moved it. I thought maybe he'd left me something. But it was gone." His eyes filled. "I thought maybe they'd already found him." "Who's they?" Morales pressed. Luis shook his head. "He never said. He just kept talking about eyes on him. Said if anything happened, trust the files." The confession cracked the case open but didn't solve it. Luis was too terrified to be lying completely, but too entangled to be innocent. He wasn't the mastermind. He was part of the plan. The FBI analysts reviewed the USB again, this time with Luis's help. Hidden deeper than before, behind dummy directories, was a series of emails and transaction records tying Kestrel to shell corporations registered overseas. The money trail didn't end in Chicago, it stretched across borders, looping through tax havens and fake charities. Luis pointed to a string of IP addresses. "That's not corporate," he said. "That's personal. Somebody inside is moving this money themselves." And then he clicked on one sender domain that made Morales's stomach drop. The emails originated from Serena Vargas's personal laptop. When Serena's name appeared on the email headers, the entire tone of the investigation shifted. For weeks she had been the grieving girlfriend, the one who cried through interviews, who clutched her phone like it might ring with Daniel's voice at any second. But digital evidence didn't care about tears. The emails were blunt. Transactions routed through anonymous wallets. Invoices masked as freelance work. Transfers timed within seconds of the micro-withdrawals Daniel had discovered. Serena's laptop had been the silent middleman, bouncing stolen funds through a maze. She was brought in again Saturday evening, this time under very different circumstances. The conference room wasn't warm anymore. Morales slid the printed emails across the table. "Want to explain this?" She stared at the paper for a long moment. Her mask didn't break. "I don't know what that is." "Those are your headers. Your device ID. Your laptop helped move close to $300,000 over 6 months. You think we wouldn't find that?" "I didn't do anything," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Someone must have hacked me." Luis was in another room, telling his version of events. According to him, Serena wasn't supposed to be part of the plan. Daniel had trusted her with almost nothing, except the dead drop location, because he loved her, and because fear makes people make stupid decisions. Morales leaned forward. "You're out of excuses. Daniel found something in his company. You were helping someone move the money." "Who?" She didn't answer. "We can trace this, Serena. It's not 1999. You're good, but you're not invisible." Still nothing. Just that blank, practiced look. Morales decided to gamble. He told her about the audio file. About Luis. About the timeline. About the USB under the bridge. Her reaction wasn't panic. It was annoyance. Like someone whose plan was unraveling because idiots kept improvising. Finally, she exhaled. "Daniel wasn't supposed to fix anything," she said softly. "He was supposed to leave it alone." The room went still. Morales kept his voice level. "Who told him that?" She looked up. Her eyes were suddenly cold, sharp. "You're digging in the wrong place, detective. Try me. You think this is about some code and stolen pennies?" She laughed once, bitter. "You have no idea what he stepped into." Morales waited. She didn't elaborate. The FBI analysts, listening through the feed, exchanged glances. Serena's reaction wasn't the guilt of someone caught stealing. It was the resignation of someone who knows something too big to control. Meanwhile, in the next room, Luis cracked further. He admitted Serena had met someone weeks before Daniel disappeared. A man in a suit who showed up at their apartment one night when Daniel wasn't home. Luis hadn't caught his name, but he remembered the car, dark blue BMW, no plates. Serena told Daniel it was a client from her freelance work. Daniel didn't believe her. They'd had their worst fight 2 nights later. Morales returned to Serena with this information. Who was in the BMW? No response. Serena, listen to me. Daniel's gone. Hale's either missing or dead. Luis is talking. If you don't start explaining, you're going to take the fall for everything. Her jaw clenched. I told him to walk away, she said. I begged him. From what? From them. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. She rubbed her face like someone exhausted of hiding. You think those emails were mine? They were routed through my laptop, yeah. But not by me. I left it at Daniel's place all the time. He used it too. And the guy in the BMW, he's not corporate. He's worse. Name. I don't know it, she snapped. But he worked for people who don't forgive mistakes. Daniel thought he could outsmart them. That's why he made the drop. That's why he called Luis. He thought he had leverage. But they were already watching him. Morales's stomach tightened. How do you know that? Because they came to me, she whispered. They told me if Daniel didn't hand over what he found, they'd make it disappear. All of it. The files. Him. Me. Everything. The confession hit like a punch. Serena hadn't been the mastermind. She'd been the pressure point. She looked up at Morales with hollow eyes. I told him to stop. He wouldn't listen. He said if we were smart, we could burn them and walk away rich. I told him that's not how it works. And then he got that call. Monday night. 8 days since Daniel Whitaker vanished. Chicago was humid again, the air thick and restless, like the city itself knew something was about to snap. Detective Morales didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the evidence room long after everyone else went home, staring at the USB drive under the glass. It wasn't just data. It was a key, but the lock was still hidden. The timeline, the players, the money, none of it added up cleanly. Serena had been pressured. Daniel had been clever, but not clever enough. Luis had been tangled in the middle. Hale was either a hired shadow or a dead decoy. But there was still one thing no one could explain, the burner phone's reminder at 4:45 p.m., drop. Daniel said it himself. He planned to move or retrieve something. But if he disappeared at 4:41, who finished the job? Morales went back over the footage one more time. The deli cam. The dry cleaner reflection. The hooded man. He slowed the playback frame by frame. At first, it was the same sequence he'd memorized. But then, for just a split second, he saw something different. At 4 hours 44 minutes and 2 seconds, reflected in the dry cleaner's window, a car door opens across the street. A dark sedan. The hooded man walks past it without looking, but someone else is already standing by the rear door. Someone shorter. Wearing a light jacket. The angle was bad. But Morales froze the frame and zoomed until the pixels broke apart. There was just enough to make out the scar on the jaw. Not Hale. Luis. His stomach dropped. Luis had said he never saw Daniel that afternoon. But the footage said otherwise. He'd been there. And he'd been lying. They brought him in again Monday morning. This time, no soft questions. Morales slid the still frame across the table. Explain this. Luis stared at it for a long time. His face drained of color. It's not what it looks like, he whispered. Then tell me what it is. He rubbed his temples, shaking. I didn't want it to go this way. I swear to God, I didn't. Start talking. Luis cracked like glass under pressure. He admitted that Daniel's plan to use the files as leverage had spiraled fast. Hale wasn't some random contractor. He was supposed to be the middleman, arranging a quiet exchange with the people behind the fraud. Daniel thought he could outsmart them, hand over part of the data in exchange for protection, maybe even a payout, while keeping enough to burn them later if needed. Luis had agreed to help because he was scared. He'd been in over his head for weeks. Serena didn't know the full scope, but Daniel had told Luis almost everything. The problem was, Hale got cold feet. And the people behind the scheme didn't like hesitation. The plan was to meet near the bridge that afternoon, move the drop, and prep for the exchange. But Hale panicked, someone else showed up early, and Daniel realized the trap too late. Luis swallowed hard. I saw him get into the sedan, he whispered. I saw them drive off. I should have stopped it. But they told me if I said anything, I'd end up in the river too. Who was driving the car? Morales asked. Luis hesitated. And then the twist dropped like a hammer. It wasn't Hale, he said. It was Kendry. The room went silent. Robert Kendry, the polished executive, the man who dismissed the fraud chart like a bad joke, had been there the entire time. Luis explained, Kendry had been the architect of the scheme from the start. He'd used Serena as a pressure point, Luis as a pawn, Hale as a disposable errand boy. Daniel stumbled into his operation, and Kendry decided to clean up before the launch of their project. They were supposed to scare him, Luis said. Not make him disappear. But Daniel hadn't played along. He'd set the dead drop, called Luis, tried to run leverage. And Kendry reacted the way powerful men do when cornered. The FBI moved fast after that. Kendry was arrested trying to board a flight to Zurich. Hale's burned car turned out to be a stage distraction. Serena entered witness protection. Luis accepted a plea deal in exchange for full testimony. Daniel's body was found 2 weeks later in an abandoned warehouse outside Gary, Indiana. He'd been dead since the night he vanished. The USB and burner phone had been his last desperate move to stay ahead. He almost succeeded. The case of Daniel Whitaker shook Chicago. Not because a corporate executive turned out to be a criminal, that part wasn't new. But because it showed how fragile truth becomes when fear, love, and greed intertwine. Luis wasn't innocent. Serena wasn't evil. Daniel wasn't invincible. And Kendry wasn't untouchable. In the end, everyone underestimated everyone else. And that's how a quiet intern vanished in broad daylight, not by magic, but by design.